I'm Sophia J, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you haven't already, make sure to like, subscribe, and give me a follow on Facebook. Today, we're going to be reading Fractions in Disguise by Edward Einhorn. Let's get into it. Before we begin, let's go over what is a fraction. A fraction is a part of a whole. The top number of a fraction is called the numerator, and it is the number of parts we have. The bottom number is a denominator, and is how many parts the whole is separated into. Next is equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions are fractions that have the same value, but their numerator and denominator are different. For example, 2/5 is equivalent to 4/10. We know this because if you multiply both the numerator and denominator of 2/5 by 2, you get 4/10. Some kids collect baseball cards. Some collect action figures. Me, I collect fractions. I've been collecting them for exactly 2/3 of my life. In my bedroom, shelves full of fractions cover 3/4 of my wall. Maybe it's because I was born during the half moon. Or maybe it's because I'm 1/4 genius, 1/4 stubborn, 1/3 determined, and 1/6 crazy. But for me, it all adds up to one thing. I can't get enough of those darn fractions. So when a brand new 5/9 went up for auction, you know I was the first in line to buy it. The 5/9 is a thing of beauty. When you first look at it, it looks like a 1/2, but the more you look, the more you realize it's just a little bit more. The room was filled with regular customers. Baron von Mathematic, Madame de Geometric, and the mysterious Dr. Brok, a former university professor rumored to have been fired for the illegal possession of 4 zeroths. I bid $500,000. Madame de Geometric bid 3/4 of a million. Baron von Mathematic bid 7/8 of a million. Our bids were clearly approaching $1 million. Would we ever reach it? Suddenly, we found ourselves in darkness. "There's a foul play afoot!" cried the Baron. His fears proved true. When the lights went back on, the 5/9 was nowhere to be seen. Neither was Dr. Brok. "Alas, he's stolen it!" exclaimed Baron von Mathematic. "He never gets his fractions fair and square," agreed Madame de Geometry. "But how can he hope to hide it?" I asked. "He's a master of disguise, Mr. Factor," Madame de Geometry explained. "He can make a 1/2 turn into 2/4, or a 3/6. It's still the same fraction, but it looks different. So, am I to understand that he can take 3/5, I began. "Multiply the 3/4 and the 5/4, continued Madame de Geometry, "and have something that looks like a 12/20, I concluded. "But it's still 5/5, really," Madame de Geometry agreed. "He just doesn't want you to know it." "My poor, beautiful fraction," wailed Baron von Mathematic. "Don't despair," I said. "I have an idea." That night, I worked till dawn. By morning, I had what I needed. A reducer. What is a reducer? It's 1/2 ray gun and 1/2 calculator made from a whole lot of paper clips, a whisk, some discarded computer parts, and sheer ingenuity. What does it do? It removes the disguise from a fraction and reduces it to its lowest terms. I tested it out that morning. For a long time, I had owned a 10/15, but I suspected it could be another fraction in disguise. I pointed the reducer at it and dialed 2. The top number, or numerator as we call it in the trade, wavered, trying to turn into a 5, but the bottom number, or denominator, stayed the same. I dialed a 3, and the denominator tried to transform into a 5, but the numerator wouldn't budge. I dialed a 4 and nothing happened. Finally, I dialed a 5. The fraction changed completely. The 10 became a 2, and the 15 became a 3, leaving me with a sleek 2/3. The reducer was ready to go. Dr. Brok lived in a mansion that had to be 1/10 of a mile tall. When I rang the bell, he opened the door halfway. "Let me in, Doctor," I told him. "I know you have the 5 nines in there, and I'm going to find it." Come in," he purred. "Take a look around. You'll see no 5 nines in here." I went in. There were fractions everywhere, piled on shelves, bursting from cupboards, covering the floor. There was even an enormous 100 hundredths hanging from the ceiling. I quickly spotted my first frog. "That's 3/21st, I said. "It's really a 1/7, isn't it?" I pointed my reducer at the fraction and dialed 3. Both the numerator and the denominator were divided, and now I had a 1/7 before me, as I had suspected. "That's a very interesting device you have there," commented Dr. Brok, eyeing the reducer nervously. "Ingenious, really." I spotted another suspicious fraction. Could that be the 5 nines from the skies? It was a 34/63, and it looked familiar. I dialed 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nothing seemed to work. "You can't reduce that one," said Dr. Brok. "That fraction's already reduced to its lowest terms, I'm afraid." He was smiling in secret satisfaction as he said it, but he was right. That fraction was as reduced as it could be. I found a few more fractions that could be reduced. An 8/10 became 4/5, 2/16 became 1/8, and an 11/22 became 1/2. But no 5 nines. I even looked through the garbage, full of old fractions and fraction pieces so small they were worthless. I found a piece from a 1/28, 1/63, and 1/92. The 5 nines was nowhere to be seen. There was something I was missing. "Well, it was nice of you to visit," Dr. Brok began saying. "I would invite you to stay longer, but I was just to polish all my fractions." "This 1/63, where did it come from?" I interrupted. "It's just an old broken fraction," sputtered Dr. Brok. I quickly raced back to the 34/63. The tiny 1/63 fit perfectly into it, making the fraction a 35/63. This was a fraction that could be reduced. "Wait, no!" cried Dr. Brok. But it was too late. I had already pointed the reducer and dialed 7. The 35 became a 5, while the 63 divided and became a 9. There it was, right in front of me, the 5 nines I had been looking for. "Very clever," said Dr. Brok with a sneer. "I didn't think you had it in you." He raced up the stairs and unhooked a rope. Suddenly, the 100 hundredths above me began falling, and all 100 pieces of it looking like daggers. I dialed the reducer up to 100, aimed high, and jumped for cover. A solid disc landed with a clatter and rolled away. The 100 hundredths had become a single whole, no longer a fraction at all. But Dr. Brok was gone. Baron von Mathematik and Madame de Geometrie couldn't believe it when I told them the story. "You did it, Mr. Factor," the Baron cried, saluting me. "The fraction is yours," said Madame de Geometrie. "You earned it." I put it in the most prominent place on my top shelf, right next to the reducer. Now, every morning when dawn comes, the first ray of light through my window lands on the 5 nines. It doesn't look half bad.
Hello, mathematicians. Let's review how to reduce fractions. In this example, we will be reducing 24/36. The first step is to find the GCF, or the greatest common factor, of the numerator and the denominator. To do this, we need to list all the factors of 24, the numerator, and 36, the denominator, and then find the factors that they share, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. The greatest common factor is the factor that they share that is the largest, in this case 12. The second step is to divide the numerator and the denominator by the GCF. 24 divided by 12 is 2, and 36 divided by 12 is 3, meaning that 24/36 in its simplest form, completely reduced, is 2/3. So mathematicians, what did we learn today? Well, first, we learned that a fraction is part of a whole. We also learned that equivalent fractions have different numerators and denominators, but have the same value. And finally, finding the GCF or greatest common factor of the numerator and denominator is key to simplifying the fraction. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Goodbye, mathematicians!